YouTube? We are back with another deck profile for you guys. For those of you who are tuning in on Monday and watching this video go live, thank you for being members to our channel. We truly do appreciate every one of you, and the support that you give us truly does not go unnoticed. So thank you once again. For those of you who are watching on Wednesday when this goes live to the public, do consider becoming a member. It is something that I think we're trying to do a little bit more with. Right now, we have early access to deck profiles such as this one, as well as early access to our deck check series, which goes live every Friday for you all. In the future, as we start to get Twitch on on its feed and other, more exciting interactive stuff going on with the channel, we do hope to give more perks to our members. But for right now, those are the two major perks that we have. And if you're interested in becoming one, do check out the link on how to do so down in the video description, along with our socials. I will link our Discord, etc., as well as the new Twitch links down there. So check them out. This week's deck profile is going to feature Xros Heart. So for those of you who don't know, Xros Heart is one of my favorite decks of all time. I truly loved the deck when it first came out, and I played nothing but Cross, really until we got Mirage Gao. And then me being me, got Mirage and played Mirage until now too. But maybe you can see a pattern here. Who knows? But anyways, Cross is, like I said, Cross will always be a deck that has a very dear and special place to my heart. Shout out to the fellas, Stack, Nate, Shamoon. You guys also help inspire me to make my deck list the way that they are, and also help me enjoy the list as much as I do. So love you guys for it. Hopefully this is something that you guys enjoy too. I know we've had a lot of good back and forth about how we want the new Cross to look, or how we feel like Cross is going to be in the new meta. This video also will touch upon that, because I wouldn't necessarily call this my deck profile, mainly because I really haven't found a build of this deck that I truly enjoy or truly want to call my own just yet. So I wouldn't necessarily say this is a true deck profile, but maybe more so a deck discussion, if you want to call it that. This is an accumulation of a lot of the topping lists that we've seen in JP, as well as some stuff that we've talked about amongst ourselves, like I said, as we're trying to build this deck and see where it can go. There is another world where I maybe try a little bit more of an OG Flare cross list, but that has yet to be fine-tuned, so I didn't want to put that out for you guys just yet. I'll definitely update you all when I kind of come up with a build that maybe feels better for me, but for right now, I wanted to go over what a lot of folks will be seeing when you're thinking about Xros Heart in the 2.5 meta, right? So this is my take on it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And let me know if you guys would have any other improvements. I'm definitely open to it. So starting off with our egg, we run the new Pikmons here. I think for the new archetype for Cross, this Pikmons makes a lot more sense than the old one. This one allows you to tuck things underneath your Tamer to draw one. So not only is it adding consistency to your hand, it's also adding consistency in the sense that you're tucking your Tamers or your Digimon underneath your Tamers, which is where you want them to be, so that you can utilize them for your sort of ultimate move down the line, right? So this Pikmon just kind of fuels that game plan so much better than the other one. Again, we'll talk about the old stuff and how I feel about it later on, but for now, we'll just stick to what we have here, and we do run 4 of the new egg. Moving on to the rookies, we do run 4 of the new Shoutmon. So Shoutmon here, I think it's decent, right? On play, you can warp Evo into an Omni Shoutmon without paying the cost, which is pretty decent, which we'll talk about in a second. You're really using it for that early poke, where on deletion, you're hoping it dies. You reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, then you can go ahead and play one Tamer with the Xros Heart trait from those revealed cards without paying the cost, and then it has save. So, I think a pretty decent, consistency rookie, if you want to call it that. It has material save, so you'll be able to tuck it in. It does have the inherit of Rush, which is a classic Shoutmon Xros Heart combo, but you're really utilizing this rookie for the ability to try and cheat out Tamers as quickly as possible, because as we've seen before with Cross, you live and die by your Tamers, and you truly live and die by seeing Taiki or the triple Tamer out as quickly as possible. So if there's a way to cheat it out, you try to use that, and this is exactly what this new Shoutmon does. Moving on to the next level 3 that we have is the new Sparrowmon. When attacking, you can evo into a Raptor Sparrow under your Tamers without paying the cost. On deletion, it has save and inheritable of Collision. So again, I think it's decent, right? Like, again, if you were to ask me about the old Sparrowmon versus the new one, I think if you're going into the new Xros Heart strategy, this Sparrowmon makes much more sense. The old one doesn't do as much for the game plan as this new one. So again, I think the archetypes are different now, where you kind of are pushed towards the new things, which is what we see here. I think the Sparrowmon is very good, mainly because you can warp into the Raptor Sparrow, which we'll talk about in a quick second. So yeah, you know what? Let's just talk about him, just to, since we're on that note, right? So if you go Sparrow, you swing, you can Evo into this guy here for free. And on Evo and on play, you can go ahead and cycle top 3 cards of your deck and pick up a Xros Heart piece. So again, just helps your consistency. You do get to draw off the Evo, which again helps add cards to your hand. You get to cycle more. So again, you can kind of see where they're going with here with the consistency aspect of things. On deletion, you place a Digimon with a Cross trait or Blue Flare trait from your hand or trash under one of your Tamers. So a very common theme that we're going to be seeing with the rest of the Cross line moving forward. And then the Inheritable, again, has Collision. I will make a comment here about Collision. It's a little awkward, not gonna lie. It sort of reminds me of like the, I believe it's BT16 Daruga or BT17 Daruga, where it has that. It's like a neat way where you can Collision and force like little floodgates or small level 3s to block, and you know, you can get rid of them that way. I will say, like, otherwise, it kind of feels mid, because if you swing and they just have a bigger body, which you're only at 5k at, there's a very good chance that you just die, right? So it's just, okay, great, you get to tuck something underneath, which, again, one could argue that's like the bread and butter of your game plan. It just feels very weird, right? Like, it'd be like, well, maybe you should have given him like 6k DP, if anything, right? But yeah, I mean, that's what it does. It's a good consistency card. So we do run it at a 4 of. We do round out the level 4s with 3 of the Shooting Starmon. It's good really for the EX6 combo play. You want to see a Shooting Starmon underneath one of your Tamers when you go into EX6, because that helps with your win con. And then all turns, it has a pretty decent effect too, which reads, when any of your Xros Heart trait Digimon are played until the end of your opponent's turn, something gets check -1 and -3k DP. So it does see itself as well. So when you play out a Shooting Starmon off of your EX6 play, it sees itself get played, and you can do the check -1 and -3k DP. So I think a pretty decent effect there. And then on deletion, again, you just tuck something from hand or trash underneath one of your Tamers. So I think, again, really they're just for the combo EX6 play. And then moving on to the level 5s of our deck, we do run 4 of the new Omni Shoutmon. Has Inheritable of Rush. It is one of the Digicross materials for EX6, so this is how you're going to get your EX6 to swing on the turn that it's played. On play and on Evo, you get to -3k DP on a Digimon, and then delete something with 3k DP or less. It's okay. You know, I think there are a lot of things that it can help delete, but again, a lot of things that kind of don't care about that effect, right? So it's all right. I think it just feels for me, right? You know, when you Evo into it from Shoutmon, you have to pay the 4 to play the Shoutmon. Yes, you can Evo into this for free, but it just feels like, okay, I got rid of maybe like a smaller level 4 or whatnot. And that's really about all you can do with this card. But again, like I said, it's a key Digicross component to EX6, so you do run it at a 4 of. Jaeger Darulu is the next level 5 that's run in this deck. This one's actually not too bad, right? So on play and on Evo, you suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, and then until the end of their turn, one of their Digimon can't activate when Digivolving effects or unsuspend. So it's an interesting effect, you know. I think being able to block when Digivolving effects in general is a really, really good effect to have on any Digimon. Being able to play this out and say, yes, we're gonna stop that is pretty neat. Unfortunately, you don't run any Ballista or any Darulus to Evo into this guy, so you don't really see that effect go off, which makes this feel sort of like if you just slam him down for 7. So more often than not, the level 5s, again, common theme is they're just getting tucked underneath your Tamers. You don't really play them out or Evo into them. You just go ahead and tuck. So again, key piece for EX6. Has a pretty neat on play and on Evo, but you really care for it for its Digicross potential, which you just want them underneath your Tamers. which is the same thing for Atler Ballistamon here, right? Has a pretty neat on-play and on-evo effect, but it's basically you can't bounce or return the card to hand or deck, and you give yourself plus 3k DP, which in theory sounds pretty good, but again, most often than not, you're not wanting to slam them down for 7, so it's getting tucked underneath a Tamer. Has Inheritable of Blocker, which is not bad for your big stack. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about the level 5s. Like I said, the commonality for these level 5s are they're just getting tucked underneath your Tamers. New Cross, I feel like, doesn't run in a way where you are utilizing their on-play and on-evo effects. If there's anybody out there who has experienced differently, please do let me know. But more often than not, with this particular build, I feel like they just keep getting tucked underneath your Tamers, and that's really about all they wrote. So I do run a 4-3-3 split just so I can fit some other things in. You do draw and cycle enough with this deck where you are bound to see them. But it is something to consider. Like, if you really want to bump the ratios up a little bit, you will sacrifice, I think, either Tamer volume or option volume. But then, rounding out the Digimon, we're going to skip EX6 for now and just highlight Z Greymon here really fast. It has on play and when Digivolving, De-Digivolve 2, one of your opponent's Digimon. Then if your opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play, you can return one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon to hand. It's okay. You know, I think there's a sneaky play that you will talk about in a little bit with the Valderarm play. But otherwise, it's really there for the Digicross piece to EX6. So EX6 needs Z Greymon, Omni Shoutmon, Jaeger Dualumon, Atler Ballistamon, and the Raptor Sparrow in order to Digicross. So again, if your boss monster is a EX6, you want pieces for it, hence why we're running 3 Z Greymon. And speaking of EX6, here's the big Megazord himself. This is what the deck is revolved around, and this is how the deck wants to win, right? So everything revolves around being able to Digicross into EX6, uses effects to do some big damage in one turn, and either you hopefully gone for game by this point, or you put your opponent in a spot where, you know, they are looking pretty slim on resources, right? So what it has Alliance, it has Reboot, and Material Save ×4. On play, for each color in this Digimon's Digivolution cards, all of your opponent's Digimon get minus 1k for the turn, and then you can play out a Shooting Starmon from underneath your Tamers without paying the cost. So if you think about the inheritables or Digicross materials for EX6, you run Omni Shoutmon, like I said, Jaeger Dualumon, all Atler Ballistamon, Z Greymon, and Raptor Sparrow, which gives you a total of 6 colors. Because you have 6 colors, you'll be able to neg the board 6k, and then when Shooting Star gets played out, you additionally will neg a 3k DP on something else too. So you could potentially reduce up to 9k DP worth of Digimon to the board, and then you could give something check -1. When attacking, you can go ahead and pop something with less DP than EX6, which again, at 12k DP, you kind of need that 6k negation or reduction to help make that play viable, which also feels kind of bad, not gonna lie. Because if you're missing a Digicross piece, you lose out on some colors, you lose out on DP reduction, and you could lose out on the when attacking deletion as well. I was hoping that something would have buffed them up a little bit. Z Greymon will do that. It'll give him like 14k DP, but again, it's tough, man. I just feel like they kind of nerfed the deck a little bit too much here. But it's still a decent card. It has a good finishing move, which we'll talk about in a little bit with the option card, but this is essentially what EX6 will do. Comes out, negs the board a little bit, and threatens a really big alliance swing with your Shooting Starmon. We're going to wrap up the Digimon here with our level 7, which is Chaosmon Valderarm. I think in general, like, Chaos is a really generically good level 7, like, yellow-green card. Most yellow and green decks, I feel like, will find a way to run it, which I think is really cool. It has check +1 inherently, has partition as well, but it doesn't have any, like, DNA Evo specific effects. All of its effects are when Digivolving. So typically what you can do is you can take this and Evo on top of your EX6. When you Evo on top of EX6, for each of these Digimon's level 6 Digivolution cards, you suspend one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers and gain a memory. Then none of their Digimon or Tamers can activate on-play effects or unsuspend until the end of their turn. So essentially what you can do, right, if you've digicrossed with the full requirements, you evo into Chaosmon, you suspend 2 things because you have EX6 and Z Greymon, and then you can go ahead and gain 2 memory back, making this effectively a 3 cost evo. And then you can say, okay, 2 things can't unsuspend and they can't activate on play effects, right? Not bad. Not a bad way to say, look, like we just need an extra turn to stall out, and this is the stall move, right? I think very, very good like stall tactic and also blanket effect for these yellow-green decks. It's also interesting too that if Chaosmon does end up getting deleted or removed from the field, right, you can partition, play out EX6 and Z Greymon, and still get their on-play effects, because EX6 counts as a yellow Digimon, Z Greymon will count as a black Digimon, right? So some interesting shenanigans you can pull off there. Is that always going to happen? Not all the time, right? But the potentiality is there, and your opponent does have to play around that, okay? So that will wrap it up for our Digimon. We'll move on to our Tamers now. This guy doesn't need much of an explanation if you've ever played Xros Heart before. He is the like heart and soul of the engine, BT10 Taiki. You definitely run him at a 4 of. There's no reason not to. Reveal 4, tuck 1 under a Tamer, and then put 1 to hand is always really, really good for consistency. And again, if you want your stuff underneath your Tamers, you want cards that'll do that, and Taiki has done that. Next, we run 2 of the BT19 Nene. Mainly, it's a memory setter. This deck, unlike previous cross iterations, needs memory. So having a memory setter is actually pretty valuable now for cross. And Nene also allows you to cross from the trash as well. So if something is in trash and you need it to either cross into like EX6, etc., you don't have to rely on it always being underneath a Tamer. You can just make sure that the shooting star is under the Tamer and then use, you know, a source from trash to go ahead and go into EX6. So I do run 1 of her. If there's room to bump her up to 2, I definitely could. I could see myself cutting back on either, like, for example, 1 Valder arm. I could see myself cutting back on maybe a Sepia memory boost to up my Nene count. But for right now, I feel like 1 feels okay. And then we round out the Tamers with 4 of the triple Tamer from BT11. Again, it's an expensive 4-drop Tamer, but you do gain memory and draw 1 at the start of your main phase if you tuck something underneath it. Which again, this deck wants to see its level 5s get tucked underneath its Tamer, so this again helps speed that game plan up a little bit. And it gives you memory and consistency while doing so. So I think you definitely run this at a 4 of. Right now, unfortunately, there really isn't any room for the old like Zenjiro or the Akari, mainly because these new level 5 cards don't sync very well with them. So Zenjiro and Akari have to play out a Darulu or a Ballista. And while the Jaeger and the Atler Ballista do count as Darulu and Ballista respectively for Digicross, they themselves are not treated as Darulumon and Ballistamon. They are their own Jaeger, Darulu, and Atler Ballista. So unfortunately, like, you won't be able to cheat these guys out with your Akaris or your Zenjiros, which is why they've been eliminated from the deck. And they really don't see much play. We'll get to them in a little bit, but for now, that's why you round out the Tamers with these like, you know, the triple Tamer, the Taiki, and the Nene. All right, and to wrap up the deck, we are going to run 2 options here. First option we're going to run is the Meteor Rock Soul, which is sort of the new like win con or win condition for the deck when you pair it with EX6, right? It's a 3-cost option that says you can activate one of the effects below. First effect is you may play 1 Xros Heart Digimon card with 4k DP or less from under your Tamers without paying the cost, which again doesn't really feel great because a lot of the cards here are more than 4k DP. But the second effect, which is what you're mainly running this card for, is by unsuspending one of your Shaman EX6 and one of your Shooting Starmon, one of your Digimon may attack a player. And then security effect, you can play 1 Xros Heart trait Digimon with 4k DP or less from under your Tamers without paying the cost. So mirrors the first effect, right? But let's talk about the second effect here for a quick second, right? So essentially what you want to be doing, like the big combo play that this deck wants to do, is you want to Digicross into your Shoutmon EX6. You go ahead and do the things, you minus 6k DP potentially, minus 3k DP off of the Shooting Star. You go ahead and swing. You do have alliance, so you will alliance with your shooting star, doing 2 checks. And then you go ahead and play Meteor Rock Soul, hopefully 2 pass turn. And then you can go ahead, restand both of them, and then swing another 2 checks. If you have enough memory, hence why we're running the memory boost that we'll be talking about in a quick second, sometimes you can just go ahead and play a second one, restand, and swing again, right? So the win condition is being able to get into EX6, go into Meteor Rock Soul, do your damage, play the Meteor Rock, swing again, and if you can potentially do it again, you just do it again, right? But so yeah, so that's why you need the memory, hence the memory setter, hence the triple tamer that gains you memory, and also hence Sepia memory boost, which will also be a way to gain memory. I'm running 3 of each option, so 3 of Meteor Rock, 3 of Sepia. Sepia, ironically, pretty much searches everything in this deck because everything is either yellow or it has black. So you will pretty much get a hit on all your Digimon with Sepia, which is why I think it's actually pretty clutch for this deck, ironically. But yeah, that rounds out the deck. So a little bit of my thoughts here, right? So as someone who played Cross back in like BT10, BT11 era, this is markedly different, right? As you've seen here, there aren't any Digi-crossing that you're doing. You're not doing the quick, like, oh, for 1 cost, let me play an X4, do the thing, swing, restand, go into an X3, swing, you know, and go into another like X5 for free and do yada, yada, yada. You're not doing that anymore. You're doing a lot of swing with lower end body, tuck something underneath off a tamer effect, etc., and then warp into EX6 and do your big damage there. So it almost feels like you're accumulating a lot of pieces for an end game push, as opposed to doing a lot of low to the ground tempo plays, which is, I think, a very stark contrast to like a lot of what a lot of like Cross players would anticipate this deck to be like. Do I enjoy that? I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet. You know, I do think the game has evolved in a way where decks like, for example, right, Magnamon X, Gallantmon, Medieval Gallant, Zafaga even to a degree, really just takes away your ability to play out low-end bodies and have them do well, because this low to the ground tempo aggression that Cross used to have gets absolutely run over now, right? Medieval says no. Dinomon says if you can't climb over me, you just constantly will never do damage, right? Also, cards like Hexablow still exist, right? And if they're running decks like Imperial, blue decks in general, right? If they have the right amount of sources, you won't be able to swing. So there's a lot of ways that old Cross I do feel like is shunted in this meta, which is why this stuff makes sense where you say, look, if our old play is taken out of the picture or a lot harder to achieve, let's try to maybe adapt a little bit and do something new. Hence this new EX6 combo that we have here, right? So I definitely have to do more testing with it. Like I said, there's going to be more support in BT21 as well, which will shift the way the deck plays with the new Taiki, new Shoutmon, new Omni Shoutmon, Shoutmon DX as well. So there's a lot of, I think, neat new things that we're going to be getting in the next month. But this is sort of where the deck falls right now. I think for those of you who are looking for a more low to the ground rush Cross deck, it's tough. I've tried it out and it's really tough because you're trying to utilize the old and the new at the same time. And a lot of the new Cross pieces like Ballista, Darulu, their on plays are really just evoing into Jaeger or Atler Ballista, which make them sort of like a moot card if you don't have those two in hand or underneath one of your tamers, and they don't really do much outside of act as cross pieces. And because you have to run both, you have to kind of split ratios to run a little bit of the Darulus and then a little bit of the Jaeger Darulu, a little bit of Ballista, a little bit of Atler Ballista, which hurts your consistency in my opinion. And you can't really utilize the new Jaegers and the Atlers and the Omni Shout for that matter with like X3, X4 because when you save, they don't count, like these new pieces don't count as save pieces. You can save a Ballista, you can save a Darulumon and a Shoutmon, but because these are treated for digicross but not material save, you don't get to save these pieces either when you cross. At least that's the way that I've been told. Correct me if I'm mistaken. So it just really hurts because you can't really utilize the old stuff with the new stuff. And if you do just run the old stuff, then you're basically just playing old Xros Heart, which is still in a pretty tough spot in this meta. And I think this new stuff is neat, but takes a lot of setup for, I think, questionable bang for your buck. Because there's also very, like we've talked about, like a lot of ways where EX6 just doesn't do enough, right? So I do think it's in an interesting position right now. I'm definitely going to keep trying to like tinker with this and see what we can do. I love Xros Heart. I'm never going to give up on it. So I'm definitely going to try my best to keep this going and keep you guys updated with any sort of changes that I may make in the near future. So stay tuned for it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Like I said earlier, if you want to consider becoming a member, please do so. Follow us on our socials. Check out our Twitch, which is hopefully something that we're going to keep growing as the months go forth. And yeah, hopefully we catch you on that next video. Bye-bye.